Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Alireza from Zafre, and today we're going to be talking about my experience with Webflow after using it for more than a year, and what are some pros and cons, and what I want to see change in the future. So let's get started. The first pro that I want to talk about that really caught my eye when I initially started working with Webflow was that it's really easy to get started. If you have any background in programming or just have any understanding of CSS, HTML, and JavaScript, it's really easy to just jump in and start creating layouts and websites and working on projects and moving stuff around. So I myself have experience with working on React for 1 year and have worked on multiple WordPress projects as well, and have worked on a couple of PHP projects as well. So I'm pretty familiar with JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and the fundamentals. So when I started using Webflow, it felt very natural to just get started and start creating elements and layouts that looked really nice and were very efficient. And that's probably one of Webflow's main strongest selling points. So that's why I wanted to get started with that one. The next one is that it's very powerful, even though it may not seem like it. So I initially remember thinking that, oh, I'm so limited in what I can and can't create without using custom codes. But the interactions are a lot deeper and more interesting than it seems. For example, there are interactions that can be used whenever a nav bar opens, or whenever a drop down opens, or a tab changes, or a slider changes, or for hover, tap, double tap, mouse over element while scrolling in view, scroll into view. And it may not seem like much, but whenever you start mixing all of these together to create multiple interactions, you can create some pretty interesting and advanced animations. Not advanced maybe, but at least intermediate level animations. So for example, I have this project right here. This is a template that you can purchase on Webflow Marketplace if you're interested. It's called Flavor Town. And I'm just gonna load the page now so I can see what it looks like. And we have this animation where these pieces of food, these peas and chips are flowing and growing onto the screen. It's like they're zooming in. And if I'm scrolling, we can see there's like a bunch of different animations that are playing. Like my text is popping up, all these effects are playing. Whenever I'm hovering, the food is gonna show up. As I'm scrolling, there's multiple effects being applied here. The image is changing, the text underneath it is changing, the testimonials on the left side are changing and animating. So even though it may not look that powerful at first, once you start messing around with it and look at other ideas and things that people have created, you can really start to put things together and create some pretty unique and awesome animations, like the ones you're seeing here, by mixing multiple parts together. So yeah, that's another one. Another pro that I want to talk about is spline support. So Webflow has direct spline support. I can just import a spline element into my project and just give it a URL, and then it's gonna immediately load a spline element into my project. And the best part is if I just update my spline project in my spline account, it's gonna immediately update it in the actual Webflow project. We're gonna undo that real quick, which is super neat because a spline can help you create some pretty cool 3D animations and use 3D objects, which is really nice to be able to have access to 3D animations and objects without having to use custom code, even though of course you are still going to be a bit limited if you are using a spline than if you were, for example, using free.js to write the code yourself. The next pro that I want to talk about is it's easy to make changes very quickly across the whole website. So if I come over here and change this class right here from wrap to, for example, wrapper, it's gonna immediately change this class for every element that has it across the whole website, which is super efficient and effective. And it makes things so much easier to change. You're not gonna worry about, oh, if I mess this up, it's gonna be so much harder to change later. You can just experiment and mess around with things, and it encourages you to be more creative and make decisions, and not worry about too many consequences, because you can always just change things back by changing the classes or changing the interaction, or for example going back to a backup that you've created previously before you made your changes, which helps a lot and makes it a lot easier and a lot less of a headache to try to do something cool that's innovative and interesting. Now I'm gonna talk about Webflow and how it taught me a lot more about designing websites. So as I was talking about earlier, I had already worked on React and WordPress projects before, but I normally would just look at Figma design and just create that in WordPress. But Webflow really taught me, how effective design works, how to actually make websites, how to use colors and images to really show something to the user and get them engaged and get them to use your website and click on it and interact with it. And I think that's one of the best things about Webflow is that it's really good for teaching people how to make websites and get started with them. So, and even if you are familiar with making websites using, React and other JavaScript libraries for front end, or you mainly work on backend, it can be really useful to learn Webflow because it can teach you a lot about making websites because you no longer have to worry about the code, the PHP code, the JavaScript code, the front and the backend. It's all in one place and it's going to be really easier to not be too focused on that stuff and instead mainly focus on creating engaging front end experiences and engaging UIs. The next thing, and oh my god, this one helps me so much. It's just not having to debug that much. You will still sometimes have to debug some stuff to figure out, hey, why is this not working how I want it to be working? But it's so much less common than, for example, you're working with React. I no longer have to go, console.log or use a debugger tool or a library for it just to, figure out what's not working as it should be. Or, somewhere in my code I wrote the name of something wrong, or I wasn't using TypeScript and the type isn't correct, and I'm getting a weird message in my console that just doesn't mean anything. It's so much easier to find these issues in Webflow, and it just happens a lot less common, which is the best thing about it. I just don't have to debug all that much whenever I run into issues. It's just really easy to fix, and again, this doesn't happen all that common. It's just not something that you see a lot. Now, if you were to use PHP or JavaScript to create your own WordPress project or use React and Node.js to create a full stack web application, it's going to be much more difficult and you're going to be running into bugs and issues a lot more common. Now, another point I wanted to talk about is built-in compression tools. So if I come over and click on my assets, it's basically going to show me an entire library here of images and videos and other assets, and I can simply just expand this and click on any of them that I want, and I can just hit this compression tool and it's going to ask me what format I want to for them to be transformed to. I can use AVIF or WebP, and it's just immediately going to compress those images instead of having to go on sites like Tiny PNG and other websites like that. I can just use it inside my actual workspace without having to wait for those, go search those, upload the images, wait for it to be finished, and then downloading it, and now uploading it again onto Webflow and doing all that stuff. I can just come over here and compress them by a click of two buttons, and it's immediately gonna just get it done, which is super nice. Now let's talk about some of the cons that I've run into. So the first one is that there is a maximum number of elements, not elements, the maximum number of characters that you can have in your header, inside head and footer, sorry, before the body tag. This is where you would normally put your custom code inside of, and I believe there is a 10,000 character limit on how much code you can put in here. So whenever I'm working on a website for a client that want me to create like a really advanced website with a lot of advanced interactions, I'm gonna have to use custom codes. And I do often run out of space here. Like I run out of space, and I sometimes have to, for example, create my function for my JavaScript code over here in the inside head tag, and then use it and call it over here inside before, like just so I don't run out of space for my JavaScript code. It's just so frustrating. You can get around it by creating a GitHub account and uploading your projects there, and then linking it over here using a script tag or a link tag for a CSS file. But it would be just a lot easier if this was like 20,000 instead of 10,000. Like that 10,000 just almost always gets me into trouble, and I have to figure out, okay, now what am I going to do to fix this? So that's one thing that I would love to see them change in the future too. just changing it from 10,000 to even 15,000 would help tremendously for most projects at least. Another con is that it's just hard to sometimes use SVGs in Webflow. So if you want to use custom code, I have to uh, enter HTML embed, and it's sorry, where is it? Embed. Yeah, there we go. And it's gonna allow me to enter some custom code here. For example, I can import my SVG right here. But again, this also has that 10,000 character limit, which means you're eventually gonna run out of space if you're working with a really large and advanced SVG file. So similar problem that it also hurts when you're using SVGs, not just when you're using custom code. There's also no support or any way to interact with canvases outside of just writing your own custom code, which doesn't feel great having to do that. And canvases can really help create some really awesome and interactive effects in JavaScript, but not having access to that in the actual base Webflow does feel kind of bad. But the next con is that there's just not really too many advanced effects that you can create without using custom code. There are, like I said, you can create pretty awesome stuff as we can see right here. You can create a bunch of unique effects, but you are gonna hit a ceiling where after a certain point you're gonna have to use custom code if you want to create some more impressive, more advanced level uh, interactions and effects. Now going back to the pros again, I want to talk about the editor in Webflow. So if I come over, hold on. Yes, so if I was to, for example, share this project with a client so that they can edit the website and change it and add content to it, it's going to be a lot easier to do with Webflow than something like WordPress. For example, when I want to do it for WordPress, I would have to explain to the client how WordPress even works and how the dashboard works and how accounts work in there and how you can create a new post, delete posts, and manage them and all that stuff. And the actual UI for WordPress, the actual dashboard interface for it is super ugly and outdated. So for example, let me pull up WordPress. It just this isn't the nicest UI for to show your client, and it's just hard to explain what all of these icons and buttons mean and how they work. And usually people just run into issues, or they update the plugin and then the whole website just stops working and you have to get in there and fix it. And it's very hard to debug and figure out what's wrong with it. And that's one of the reasons why we at Zafra are just moving away from WordPress and mainly focusing on Webflow, and why it's such a great tool, because it's so easy to just point your client to something like Webflow University, where they can just find all these resources to help them get their job done. And as far as the editing stuff goes, it's just a lot easier to point to a 2 minute or 10 minute video made by Webflow themselves that's very professional and well put together than having to record your own video and explaining everything part by part. That's may not look as good as the Webflow one that they put a lot of effort into. So yeah, it's just way easier for dealing with clients when it comes to Webflow than WordPress. I highly recommend working with Webflow. And if your website is just not possibly something that you can create in Webflow and you have to use WordPress, then go ahead and use WordPress, and then you're gonna run into issues when you want to deal with your clients, of course. So yeah, that's it for that one. And well, of course, we have exportable and convertible. Okay, so as far as a WordPress project goes, I can, whenever I want, just export my project by hitting this button, and it's gonna load all the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and assets for the project. And I can simply download the zip file that has all of those compressed into one folder, and I can just use that to, for example, create another website, on another hosting plan, another platform, or convert it to a WordPress project using something like Udesly, which allows you to convert Webflow projects into WordPress templates that then you can use in your WordPress project. which helps a lot because sometimes, like I said, there are limitations in Webflow, but at least you can create your UI in Webflow and then convert it into a WordPress project if you need to do that. And again, there are just some awesome tutorials provided by Webflow University that are not only great for your client to get started, but for you if you wanted to learn anything that you weren't certain about. It's just you can easily just Google it or on search it on the website, and you're gonna find something that's gonna help you get started and get going. It's also a bunch of you can either like watch a video or you can just read it right here and get the same results, which is both super useful. So yeah, that's it for today's video, and thank you for watching. If you're interested, you can click on the video on the right side of your screen to watch me talk about some of the mistakes that people usually make when they get started with Webflow. You can click on the left video to learn some pretty cool effects that we created in Webflow that may not be easy to do with the interactions, but can be done with some cool custom code. So I'll see you there, and thanks for watching.